All right. Hello and welcome to How Did We Not Know That? My name is Nat. I'm one of your co-hosts.
And I'm Jack. I'm your other co-host.
And Jack, do you want to tell us what we're going to be talking about on today's episode?
For sure. So, um, with the coronavirus situation happening, we're having a lot of economic trouble, including lots of job losses, lots of crashes in the market, and uncertainty. So, I thought it'd be interesting if we talked a little bit more about the Great Depression and compared parallels. So, Nat, tell me what you know about the Great Depression.
Yikes. Okay. So I feel like we covered the Great Depression like so much in elementary school and junior high and everything, but
In elementary school, you guys covered the Great Depression?
maybe like 6th grade. I don't know. Like
That's heavy.
yeah, I don't know. I feel like okay, so from what I remember, I feel like we talked about like the New Deal a lot and then like Um, yeah, that like from what I know, the New Deal like pulled us out of the Great Depression, but you'll
Mm-hmm.
probably prove me wrong. And then like I just remember like hearing all about like how everyone lost their job and everyone's like homeless. Oh, also the musical Annie, like that's set in the Great Depression.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So she's like the little orphan Annie, and then Daddy Warbucks. Oh god,
I had no idea that that was I felt like it was like Roaring Twenties was like that.
is it? Oh god.
Maybe it is the Great
Oh,
Depression.
that.
I feel like Daddy Warbucks wouldn't be so cheery if it was the Great Depression.
Well, isn't the so the Great Depression is after World War I,
Yeah, after World War One, we have the Roaring Twenties,
World War II. So the
and
period.
then we have yeah, and then before World War, yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. So
All
yeah,
right.
that's basically what I know. It's just the worst. That's
It
it
was it was the worst.
was not fun.
So my grandparents told me, I was like, how was it? What was it like? The
You're.
worst.
Oh yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah. So my grandparents are we've been in like the United States in that generation. So they would have migrated to the States from Italy and like the Czech Republic in like late 1800s, early 1900s. So my grandparents were going through it as children. And a lot of there's like a legacy that a lot of people talk about that happened after the Great Depression that affected the upcoming generations. And it's so true. I didn't get to talk to my grandparents about what it was like growing up, but there are a lot of things that they would do. Like my grandpa would he didn't trust the banks. He would always store his money in his mattress. Like he legit did that.
That was just
And
all the banks were collapsing, right?
exactly. And he lived through a few recessions too, because this was a big one. And I think most people aren't familiar with the dates with the Great Depression, but the stock market crashed in 1929 and it didn't hit the bottom. So that's the first crash is 1929. The bottom that the stocks were going to crash to didn't happen until 1933. So that's like 4 years of it just going down. Like not going up at all. Everything just keeps going down. And then it didn't get recovered till about the mid 1950s. So then the stock prices never came back up to what they were for like,
Oh my gosh,
yeah, like 20 years, almost 20 years. Um, over 20 years. Yeah, over 20 years.
dude. Also, another another thing I remember about the Great Depression is one of the American Girl dolls, Kit, whatever her name is. She's from. She's the Great Depression doll.
Really, Kit? I
And then
feel like Kit was like the most privileged American Girl doll.
no, because I watched the movie and like her like dad like lost his job and they were like so poor and she has to like make money for the family or something.
I had no idea. Literally, okay, American Girl dolls. I remember like a childhood friend threw an American Girl doll party and she was like the richest one out of us and her doll was Kit. Like that was her doll. So I just assumed Kit was affluent.
No, Kit was definitely the most basic American Girl doll. You had
Oh,
Kit,
okay.
man.
Yeah, okay. Okay, serves her right. No, just kidding. Um, okay, so so like my grandpa would, store money in his mattress. He didn't trust the banks, went through a lot of recessions. And then there are victory gardens. I think that might be the incorrect term, because I think that's gardens they started after the war, which could be it. But
World
yeah,
War One.
World War One, I think they had victory gardens, but my grandpa always grew his own food. Like, of course, they like would go to stores too, but they always like gardening was big, and I still love gardening, but that was really, really big. And also on my grandpa's side, we were like Midwest farmers. I think he worked in like the industry for a little bit, but this is getting into like my family history lesson instead of the Great Depression. But I mean, it had an impact on people to this day, and so many of the older generations like felt that.
Yeah. Well, now that's like starting to happen again. Like all the seeds, like you can't buy seeds anywhere.
Oh yeah, because they're snatching them up to grow.
Gardening now, and then they're also like buying chickens and like having
Raising
their.
chickens.
Oh, it's coming for full circle.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it'll be interesting. I think we're in a really interesting, unprecedented time, as they say. But
Yeah.
so I guess like to go into the Great Depression, what would you say would be like the start of the Great Depression? Do you have an idea?
So it's like after the war, World War One, and like everyone comes back, and like the whole world is like all shook up, and like isn't it like the whole world economy is like plummeting, and then right? No, am I wrong?
Kind of. So the thing is, okay, I'm just gonna get right into it. So there is a lot of debate from economists and historians as to what the actual cause of the Great Depression was. I don't think there was one single cause. There are actually multiple things going on. So to set the stage, we finished World War One. America's on the winning side. So all the other countries that are on the losing side, like Germany, they're suffering a lot because they lost. So now I think they had like a lot of fines and stuff. Don't quote me on that. They're getting punished a bit too hard, which we find out later in World War II. But since America won, we're doing well. And so we enter the period of the Roaring 20s, when prohibition was going on, but also there are lots of technological innovations during this time. And the emergence of credit happened. So you could buy things in installments and credits. So the concept of borrowing money started to exist. And with that, also more people started getting into stocks, because you could now borrow this money and put that in the stock market because it kept going up. So there's no risk that you couldn't pay it off, right? So during this time, the economy's booming. Everyone's like, it's great, great Gatsby, having a good time, throwing some parties.
Back to high school English.
Exactly, yeah. And meanwhile, some of the background stuff that was happening though was that a lot of companies weren't being honest about their like company valuation, right? So like the stock prices that you're getting are showing that everything's going up, but some companies were being dishonest about stock prices too, so you couldn't like expect that they're going to crash. Lots of economy in this that I am probably not explaining correctly, but a lot of stuff was happening. Also, in addition to technological innovation, because we have basically two different types of suffering. Everyone suffered, but there's two different types of suffering. During the Great Depression, there's like the city folk who experienced it one way, and then people in the Midwest or the Great Plains in the country who also experienced it a different way. So in the city, a lot of the suffering was coming from the fact that the stock market crashed and the banks started to fail. And there's no food too, because you can't grow food in the city. So then there's just so much.
And isn't there like a huge like homeless population?
Yeah, a lot of people, because let me see if I can explain this very eloquently. But yeah, a lot of people, similar to like what our economy is worried about today, when the banks failed. Okay, so people go to the banks and they take out like loans on credit to go invest into the stock market. And the stock market kept going up and it was overevaluated. So once eventually it started to slow down, and then we had a crash. It's called the Black Tuesday crash. And that was just when it dropped like something like 23 points. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
And from then, the way economies work is like it contracts when consumer spending slows down. So everyone whose monies were in, like whose money is in the stock market, let's say you bought a stock at like 100, and once it crashes, it goes down to 50. So now you're at a loss. So then everyone starts pulling their money out because you took out, let's say you took out like $100 on a loan to invest, and now it's going down. So you don't even have enough money to pay back like the principal of what you borrowed.
Is that also the same thing that happened in like the 2008 financial crisis, or like similar?
Similar. I think the 2008 financial crisis was with it was like a crappy mortgage
Oh
loan
yeah, like
situation.
mortgage and like real estate.
Yeah, they were like agreeing to loan out to people who weren't like should not have been given those loans. That's
Yikes.
for another episode. But yeah, so stock market crashes and then people start to panic and pull their money out more, and then the market will crash more. And that's what we're seeing today with the stock market continuing to crash on that initial first crash because unemployment like skyrocketed and businesses are shutting down. People are not spending as much. People pull their money out of the stock market so they can hold on to liquid cash and not lose any value in that. And then because there's less money in the market, prices go down even further and more people panic and more people pull money out. So
Not a good.
yeah, it's a really bad cycle. So because of that, people are losing these monies. They can't, their money, unemployment skyrockets because businesses are starting to fail too. Banks start to close down because they can't even, they've loaned out all this money and no one has the money to, like it's not there anymore, like right, like everyone has, I don't even know where it went, it's just gone, like everything got devalued. And then what else happened? Oh yeah, and then you default on your mortgage and you get foreclosed, you lose your home. So a lot of people were straight up homeless. There's emergence of things like Hoovervilles, which was named after President Hoover at the time.
That's from Annie. That's from Annie. I swear.
Oh, okay, then yeah, that definitely was in the Great Depression.
Henry Hoover. Herbert Hoover.
Yeah, Herbert Hoover, I think. Yeah, so that was going on. And so that's a city situation.
Yeah.
The farm situation, so people in rural areas were going through kind of an ecological turmoil because there was a drought that had already been starting in the 20s. So during the roaring 20s, it just hadn't rained a lot in the Great Plains area. Also, at the end of the Civil War, there was a lot of initiative for people to move out west because they were promised plots of land, which I don't know if you can do that anyways, but they did it. And so people are moving west into like this unknown territory and they're trying to farm like regular. And they just like didn't really understand the environment of the Great Plains when they moved out, and they were trying to farm like they would have closer to like the East Coast and like maybe Ohio, Midwest area. And with prairie grass, people don't realize that like prairie grass roots are actually like 5 to 15 feet long and they hold in. Yeah. So all of that soil was actually like the topsoil was very like dusty and fine. And so when you pull out that prairie grass, all of the topsoil is like softer.
Yeah.
And they just really didn't understand how to farm with that type of environment. So because of all of that, in addition to innovations in technology, which made farming easier, so there was an overproduction in crops, then the price of produce, there's so much that happened. The price of produce started to fall. So now farmers aren't able to even make a profit because there's an overproduction in agriculture.
Wow.
So yeah,
So
sorry?
so it's not like a famine, like they didn't run out of food, so they have too much.
Well, it gets to that because they had too much food. Stock prices, or not stock prices, agriculture prices fall down, like for your produce. And then because of that lack of income from like a surplus, they try to plant more and they dig up more of the topsoil. And then they basically destroy this like farming ground. I don't think they knew what crop rotation was. And that's how you get all of this like loose dirt. And eventually there was what they call the Dust Bowl, which is just like really, really big winds that picked up all this dirt. There's something like 10,000 feet high. Like you couldn't see in front of your face just because the dust was so thick. People had to wear ropes to like walk outside because they
What?
couldn't see. They would get lost.
Oh my gosh. What do you
Yeah,
do? Like, what? And you have to like farm also. Like, I can't. I can't even
exactly.
comprehend that. That's
Right, right.
like
And
world apocalypse stuff, and then also the economy is crashing. Like, I would literally think the world was coming to an end.
but yeah, basically, people were getting hit differently in different parts of the area. And you're right that the New Deal was a part of the solution. But something that people also don't realize is like the World War II actually is what a lot of economists agree is the proper end to the Great Depression, which is kind of unfortunate that like this we needed another war to kind of pull us out of that. But World War II actually provided a lot of jobs for unemployed men, and that helped stimulate our economy. But the New Deal did do a lot of good stuff as well.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Like, what do you think was the best thing to come out of the New Deal? Do you remember?
Wasn't it like all these like infrastructure projects like across the US, and then because like all these new projects were being started, basically like there were all these jobs that were being created. It was all just about like trying to create jobs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they had like a lot more protections that came up. I think I'm
Oh,
not a huge fan of Franklin Delano, but I do think that yeah, I didn't Japanese Exclusion Act doesn't sit well with me.
yeah.
Um
Yeah.
yeah, but he did do a really, really good job. And also too, I want to look into who like his economic team was because these a lot of the new changes in the laws that help stimulate the economy are really brilliant. And I am intrigued as to why they didn't think about like implementing things like this before.
Yeah.
But on the bright side, a lot of really good things that we have today came out of the Great Depression. So even though the Great Depression was like hell on earth, I think that good things come out of it. And I hope that with our current situation, good things also continue to come out of this, such as maybe like healthcare reform and all the problems that we're uncovering.
Hmm.
But to go into a little more detail about Franklin Delano's like New Deals,
Mm-hmm.
the he had two New Deals. So the first one, it's called like his 100 days. Yeah, the
Oh,
first 100 days.
first 100-day plan. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's when that was like the premise of how he got elected. And when which was in 1933, he beat Herbert Hoover, whom everyone hated.
Yeah.
And yeah, so when Franklin Delano came in, Franklin Roosevelt, I don't know why I call him Franklin Delano.
Everyone calls it FDR, right?
Yeah, FDR, that's a better one. Okay, so FDR comes in, and within his first 100 days, he basically passes all of these executive orders and gets these laws passed through Congress to stimulate the economy really quickly. One of which was the Emergency Banking Act, which was really important as a banking reform. So when they reopen, they have to be monitored by the federal treasury, which
Okay.
is it's really good because I don't know how these banks were not um, getting monitored by that, because that was a problem. They were loaning out to people money that like overloaning, and
Yeah.
that's why that was kind of like the overstimulation of the economy.
So before the New Deal, there was like virtually like no restrictions on banks, or like it was just maybe not.
I think very little restrictions on banks and how they were loaning out, and they weren't being monitored. So the
Yeah.
way I'm understanding it is that banks are businesses,
Hmm.
but now they're monitored by governments as well because it's like wealth management. But um yeah, banks I guess were kind of just like running by their own rules. There's very little laws limiting
Wow.
what they could and could not do. And then the next thing was the Securities Act of 1933, which he passed. And so it was in order to help prevent the stock market, like another stock market crash. So, like I said earlier, everyone thought that the stocks were just going to keep going up, up, and up, when really companies who were being publicly traded weren't being honest with their like the figures. And so it was more of an illusion that everything was doing really well. So the Securities Act of 1933 like required that publicly traded companies had to provide accurate information. So this is an example of how the government started to get more involved in businesses. Which also, I know that like people have like, even today, right? Like you have these big corporations like Amazon, Google, and a lot of them are against government involvement for reasons of, I don't know if it's like Red Scare, like communist scares or whatever, but I think that you do need some government involvement. And that's how we see like the biggest churn of the Great Depression in my eyes was that the government got more involved with protecting the people and and monitoring businesses like that. So, and then you were right about Public Works Administration, the Civil Conservation Corps, Agriculture Adjustment Administrations. These are all initiatives that FDR passed to help help create jobs for people. And so with that, like the Civilian Conservation Corps did a lot of good work with like planting trees and environmental conservation, which helped with the Dust Bowl. So that was an increase in like our care for the environment. And just like developing rural parts of America, there are all these jobs to build roads and bridges and schools and hospitals. So, and even dams, which helped with like small generations of energy for places like Tennessee. And then this one, because I'm in the middle of like shopping for houses, there's a administration, it's called the Federal Housing Administration and the Homeowners Loan Corporation. So that helps people refinance their mortgages and keep their homes. And today the FHA still exists for low income people who want to take out loans. So they offer you like lower down payments on houses. And it like gives more people an opportunity to actually like have a mortgage.
Wow.
Yeah, and that still exists today. So that came out of the Great Depression.
So that's good.
And also too, like Federal Emergency Relief Administration came out of it, and that would just provide help for like the unemployed and education on how to get jobs. Soup kitchens came out to that, like blankets for donation. All of these things, like more social policies of like helping the poor, came out of the Great Depression because people are suffering so badly.
Yeah, like were there, I don't know if you know, like what about like a Salvation Army, like all these like charities, although I don't know if those like necessarily originated in the US, but
yeah, I don't know if they, let's check it out.
But yeah, I feel like in my head, like my impression is that like kind of before this, like everyone was kind of like every man for themselves, and then like after the Great Depression or like during the Great Depression, it was kind of like, oh, we need to like help our fellow Americans and like focus more on that.
Agreed. Yeah. I think that it definitely, which like not to get into like capitalism versus communism, but I do think that the Great Depression, when like the country is suffering, you have to change the way that government is involved, and you have to take care of the people because everyone's suffering when you let like the majority of people stay unemployed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of good things came out.
Yeah, hopefully good things will come out of what's going on right now. And yeah.
Definitely, yeah. Oh, and then as part of the second New Deal, so he had like one New Deal and the second New Deal, the first New Deal and the second New Deal. And the first New Deal, actually, it's kind of unfortunate, but his New Deals didn't really do a lot to help with the economy. Like obviously in hindsight, they did a lot with moving us forward as a developed nation, but as far as getting people out of poverty, not a lot happened with that, which is why he had to pass a second New Deal. And that was where we had Social Security, and that would help like assist the elderly and like orphans, lots of stuff.
Wow, so Social Security wasn't established until the New Deal. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, the second New Deal, not even the first New Deal.
What's like the time period in between?
So the first New Deal was launched in 1933, and then the second New Deal was launched in 1935. And then a lot of the second New Deal handled more with like fair labor acts, FDIC, like federal deposit. I feel like there's a lot of terms in here, and I wish I could explain it more. I feel like Great Depression is such a big topic.
No, it's a pretty complex subject. Also, like at this time, like is there any laws in place for like child labor or like ensuring like safety in the workplace, anything of the sort? I don't know if you read.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, like in this time, like today, of course, there are like child labor laws.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah, but they did start like in 1938. So that was the Fair Labor Standards Act.
gotcha.
And then that limited workers to like a maximum work week, created a minimum wage, and outlawed child labor.
Wow.
Oh, and then even, United States Housing Authority in 1937 tore down slums, built new, better housing for the homeless. A lot of socialists, I think FDR was a socialist, wasn't he?
Let me Google it.
These policies feel like it, but a lot of socialist like reform kind of came out of this.
I feel like oh yeah, what FDR understood. Maybe yeah, it says I think it's debated. I don't think he like claimed him. I don't think he was a self-proclaimed socialist, but I think they're saying that a lot of his policies were like more progressive and
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. But yeah, that's kind of like overarching what good came out of it.
Yeah, that's I think it's good to learn about the good stuff that comes out about it, because whenever I think about the Great Depression, like whenever we learned about it in class, I feel like we just watched documentaries about like all the suffering and then it's like they're like, oh, here's the New Deal, but like I feel like I didn't really look into the specific policies. And I don't know, I think it's encouraging to see like how much we learned from our mistakes and how we were able to like quickly implement like all these new laws and regulations to help prevent something like this from happening again. So, even though right now we're entering a recession, like I don't know, hopefully we'll be able to implement like change quickly, and like at least like it's encouraging to see like how we learned from our mistakes before. And yeah, hopefully.
Right. I agree. And it's like unfortunate, but really hard times do promote change faster, right? Like we've been having issues with the environment for a while. We've been having issues with like our healthcare system for Lord knows how long.
Yeah, now it's like it forces everyone to like face the realities and like sit down and all have a discussion. And
yeah. Definitely. And then there's one more thing. Oh, universal basic income. That's been like a debated topic. Have you heard of that?
Not really.
Okay, no, that's fine. So Andrew Yang, who was one of the candidates for the Democratic nomination, that was like his whole premise was universal basic income. So basically, it's just that the government will provide an like X amount of money to every single person within the country. And so the theory of that, and like Mark Zuckerberg supports this as well, the theory of that is that it will allow people to be more creative and take on different pursuits because they have their basic needs met with basic universal income. And so with the stimulus check that got passed, and everyone's getting like their $1,200 checks, that's supposed to be it's kind of like a test of like universal basic income. It's like the government providing us with our basic needs. And when those are met, then you allow people to be more creative and innovative and possibly start more entrepreneurial things, which opens up the doors for more jobs and innovation for the country. So that's like the theory behind it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And that could be how things change too with this situation. Yeah. Also, health standards. I think New York finally shut down to like clean their subways overnight.
Yeah.
Like, why did that take so long? Like, the health standards are so low.
That's right. Okay, that's like one of the things I've been learning about. Like, even like washing my hands. Like, I was like, wow. I mean, I wash my hands frequently before this, but now I'm like, I wasn't singing like "Happy Birthday" like every time washing my hands. And then yeah, you think about like I guess like restaurants and like food services and yeah, public transportation. And now I'm just like, anytime I step outside, I'm just like hyper aware of how germy everything is, and so it's like made me reflect and be like, how did we survive like before? Like,
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like I wasn't washing my hands properly. Like I didn't know how to wash my hands or something.
right, like yeah, when like all these videos like surface about like how to properly wash your hands, I'm like, oh my gosh, how do people not know how to wash your hands? And then you're like, oh, I definitely like am not. I was not washing it for as long as I am now, and I don't know.
Right.
I'll just like learn like basic hygiene and like
Yeah, hygiene will increase. And like also just like the way we work too, like work from home, probably
yeah,
gonna increase. There's so many jobs that you can do from home, and real estate is so expensive.
that's why everyone. Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of people about that too, about just how like the whole office situation will like change and the whole workplace will change because like you don't like there are so many jobs where you don't need to be in a physical office and like you could be working from home and then yet you're saving so much on real estate and yeah,
Yeah, it lowers commuting costs as well.
we're entering a new era.
I know, it'll be really interesting to see. And I'm optimistic that like a lot of good things will come out of it.
Yeah, yeah, good thing, good thing.